It's like we're so distant from God though, like technologically and like
Yeah.
hardwiring, and like our software and hardware is like really distant, yet we are making these brash decisions to determine what's evil and what's not. And it's like we have free will, in my opinion. Like we have free will, but we've like kind of rooted it out with like code instead.
We've
You know?
delegated it. Yeah,
Yeah, like there's a code to bypass free will now that's like been installed in us. I'm not saying that's what wireless headphones do, but like honestly, dude, I'm sorry. Like there's some shit. Like I feel dumb. Like after I have my headphones in, like I feel a little irritable and like a little like different. I don't know. I just there's some shit about it. And um I computers don't have free will. They're at like the will of their programmer, right? And like, and at the end of the day, in the codes, they tend to correct themselves, right? Like they put code in, and the code can kind of teach itself and evolve, and within there. But like, it's still at engineers and coders, like they're the ones that are in charge of this, and like that's kind of how I feel how we are right now with like the screen and digital age, where it's like our free will is there. We just gotta like it's a fossil. Like we gotta dig it up. Like I don't know if that makes any sense. Like we gotta dig it up. It's like gotta get in there. It's in there. It's not the default setting anymore.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. I know you're that's like a big thing you were like always talking about. It was like your big beef with like Sam Harris was the free will stuff, like even before any of his like more current contemporary fuck ups.
I just try and look for examples of where God in the universe is giving us tools to succeed, tools to first of all, my free will thing is, I'm definitely a bit like I'm not like a huge fanboy, but I really respect especially the earlier work, like his first book of like Eckhart Tolle, where he's basically saying everyone was walking around with a critical, insane voice in their head 24/7 that they think is themselves. And that's not who you are. You're not the voice in your head, right? But it's so ever present that you think it's who you are. And so our whole society is just a bunch of voices in people's heads communicating with each other, and small moments where our soul leaks through and we actually connect and stuff. I agree with that 100%. So if you don't have control over the thoughts in your head, which is not, I'm not saying you can be 100% in control of everything going on in your head, but I'm saying like you can choose to live unconsciously, that is letting your mind run wild, or consciously. That's one example. I could see why, if you have absolutely zero, I'm not talking even about like meditating per se, but like I'm just saying, like I could see why you don't believe free will is a thing if you think you're the voice in your head, because it's just such a careening thing. That's step one. And then two is like,
why still wouldn't that be free will though? It's still you, no? So it's not you.
Well, who is you? It's like, is it just,
I don't know. I feel like anything that's going on inside your body is you. No, like
who's okay. So who's listening to the voice? If there is the voice in your head, who's the one that? Or if you're just like, man, these thoughts got to chill out in my head. Who's the one saying that? Right.
Right, to yourself, to your
you
own
can
voice
always
in your head, right?
zoom out. For me, it's like a feeling of zooming in.
I see.
And I say this as someone who like actively knows this is like a problem for me. Like it's not like I'm not like, how like when people, the new thing is people say like, oh my God, people walk around, they don't even have a narrative voice in their head. That's an NPC. I'm like, no, that's the opposite. That like the person that has the constant nonstop voice is the NPC. The guy without the voice in his head, that's like the enlightened guy. That's like you know what I mean? Like that's I get what they're trying to say, but I it's like a semantic thing.
Well, I know there's some like weird, I don't know who it's from, but somebody was like, I remember seeing somebody say that like internal monologues were like feminine.
I mean, I think people that say they don't have, I think internal monologue is like 99% of everyone, our species. It's just who if you didn't have an internal monologue, you wouldn't be stressed at all. You wouldn't be, you wouldn't be tripping about the past and future. And everyone is doing that. So I don't believe it when people say they don't have an internal monologue, unless they're like straight up enlightened or some shit, or like very chill. So I think it's like people are I think people that say that are like the opposite. They're like so deeply ingrained in their egoic thinking mind that it's just like taking over complete control, So anyway, like my whole thing is, one, just try and detach from your thinking mind, and like a little bit. And that's like one instance where you can start to give yourself more freedom. And number two, especially when it comes to like the psychic stuff and the remote viewing stuff, saying things like, like using your psychic abilities is demonic. To me, that's like the same thing as saying like using eyesight is demonic. It's a sense, it's like a sense that God gave us. It's like it, and granted, it's a gray area that we don't know a lot about, and like is not accepted culturally, and we can't like talk about it and all that stuff. Um, but imagine, I think the greatest mistake is completely ignoring it for your whole life in some misguided attempt to not be ungodlike or not be satanic or something. That's, to me, that's very that's just very, you know what I
Right.
mean? It's like I don't know. I don't see it. Now, of course, I'm not saying it can't be used for bad will and all sorts of stuff like that, but it's just, man, it's like I don't think God wants us to live in fear of quite the opposite. I think a more enlightened society would literally have schools teaching this to kids, from the get, and and like constantly honing it and refining it,
Right. Oh
because
yeah.
it's something like your subconscious and your precognitive abilities are something that can keep you out of trouble. There's all sorts of stories of people like, oh yeah, I avoided a car accident with my baby in the back seat because I just had that voice inside that told me not to go down that street, and then boom, I hear this crazy wreck one street
Totally.
out. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I'm just kind of like,
I'm inclined.
with all
I'm
respect to the
inclined.
pastor, like,
Yeah.
yeah,
I am
yeah,
inclined. I am inclined to think that's God though, like cuz like to me I struggle with it where it's like, I do think we have free will, but ultimately like is there a supervisor of that free will where it's like, yeah, but it's your time. I'm
uh-huh,
taking you. Like still like can that be Crichton actually has an interesting thing about free will where he was talking about it with Charlie Rose and he was like, yeah, he's like, I tend to think we have it. He goes, but what's and I'm sure there's some Neil deGrasse Tyson ass like answer for this, but he's like, when somebody taps my shoulder, unless I specifically tell myself I'm not going to look over my shoulder, but if I'm surprised by it, I'm going to turn out of,
yeah,
and like, why can't I drown myself, and things like that. Like, I can't like just stick my head in the water and drown, like, is that, he's like, is there free will if like my body can naturally just react to things? Like, that's what he's wondering.
yeah. I think there's a whole host of there's a lot of examples that are you. That's a good point. There's a lot of things
Mm-hmm.
that, like, there's scientific evidence of like parasites controlling human emotions and activities and stuff, right? And all that stuff. I think that I definitely think that there's I think that the broader question is like, as a soul, are you able to guide your life and the life and as a soul unit, as a oversoul, as a spirit, are you able to follow spirit's call? Are you able to,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And it's like kind of like to because there's the whole like atheists, we're robots, we're just like meat bots and all that stuff, and
Yeah.
it's like, well, we are, on some level, it's like that's definitely fair,
I think
I
there's
think,
way more of an enlightened soul. Like, there's definitely more of like this, like, I don't know. There's just this ability. There's this. I have a problem with it in sports. I have a problem with it in everything. Just the need to just quantify everything and
yeah,
the need to explain everything rather than just react to the beauty of it, and just be like, oh my gosh, like, you know, okay, we're just this meat bot and stuff. It's like, no, we're not. I'm sorry. Like, this is just there's just no way. There is no way that this is all just like the result of just science over
no,
science and like some, a couple explosions back in the day creating this and that. Like, that's not the way this happened. Like, there's something in charge. Like,
yeah,
there's something in charge. Like, you want to debate about what it is. I'm not going to fight you on it. I kind of feel like I have it figured out with my beliefs, but it's okay. Like, I listen. I don't shun. I'm not freaking out because it doesn't make me believe in God any less if I hear somebody else's take on it. And that's a free will thing. That's being strong in your faith, right? Like, and not even like in a like, oh, I go, I say 15 Hail Marys a night or anything. It's like, no, I think a lot of people are scared to be like scared to be like kind of lured out of their faith. And like even then, even with the devil present, because the whole reason this Father Malachi Martin guy was on there was to talk about exorcisms on Art Bell.
Yeah.
And he was saying, he's like, no, like, look, there's just certain times where demons straight up possess you.
Yeah.
Like he's just like they hate you and they're terrible and it's just for your doom, essentially. Like it's just all bad. He's like, there's a way where that can happen. And he then says, like,
so I have a take on this. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, he then says, like, a guy who just like hacks his family to bits because that was his idea, like, that's just sinning, man. Like that, like to him, he's like, that's just no, he's just like, that's just sinning. Like that's not, nobody possessed you. You're just like, I sinned. Like it's free will. I did it. You know what I'm saying? Like, and you know, granted that guy might actually have been possessed. He had said, like, you know, but he's just saying, like, he performed exorcisms. So he was able, like, I'd be able to tell, you know, if certain guys like had a demon, you know, in them and stuff. So I found that really interesting too, where I'm just like, look, at the end of the day, like you have the ability to live. If you think Balenciaga is demonic, you can still pick a heavenly path through life. Like, you know what I mean? A godly path through life. Like you can still do that.
Yeah, from the 5 to the 6, we be in the mix with that rare candy paint job on the whip. I need food for the kids, money for the rent. Fuck a lockdown, baby, I can't do that shit. And I don't never vote, cause I'm fucking broke. And either way, I know the police ain't gon' leave me alone. On a plane by to visit Glen Rock, need crypto, told me I should bring the Glock with me. So I packed up my piece and I'm sliding. Cause we might get caught up in a riot. Middle finger Trump, middle finger Biden. Fuck a left, fuck a right, is you riding? Know you love to see it, dudes rocking. Ain't no politics, baby, we just talking. From the birds to the bricks, we be in the mix with that rare candy paint job on the whip. Who you with?